All right, hello, and thanks for tuning back into Food Chain Wars. This is a show where we break down e-commerce and direct marketing strategies for farm-to-fork brands who are trying to compete and go toe-to-toe with the corporate food barons who are out there stealing all of our market share. And what we're doing is we're just trying to take our experience of growing our business, Seven Sons, to multiple seven figures, and take what we're learning from our clients over at Grace Cart as well to help you compete and climb the food chain. As always, my name is Brooks Hitzfield, your host, joined by my brother Blaine, CEO of Seven Sons. Blaine, you want to give an intro for the topic of the episode today?
This is a part of our Don't Screw Up series, and today we're talking about don't screw up your logo.
So this series is... Generally, we talk about on this series things that are like, if you neglect, they can be catastrophic for your business. So kind of those Trojan horses or nightmares that can occur in the business. This one's a little bit more subtle, and it definitely has the biggest impact for those who are starting out. If you're not maybe getting the traction that you thought you should be getting, sometimes it can come back to this. This is also, Blaine, one of those areas that calling someone's logo or the name of their business ugly is like calling their child ugly.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing to call out, even when we're working with folks at Grace Cart. So we thought we'd just record an episode on it instead.
Yeah, it's something you can be barn blind on. It's like your kid's always the cutest. Everyone thinks their logo is the best when the reality is, Brooks, even at Seven Sons, we went through some pretty horrible logos over the years, but we are proud of each and every one of them.
Oh yeah. We were so pumped, like this is it. This one's it for sure. Speaking of that, I thought it would be fun if we kick this thing off with you can be as descriptive as you want, but what are some of the worst names and logos that you've come across out there?
Honestly, I'll pick on ourselves first. When we first got started in early 2000, of course, the big thing back then was food storage. So we came out with one of our first products was actually a pre-cooked canned meat product. Isn't that kind of bizarre? But we had a local cannery that did this, and it was easy to inventory. It wasn't very perishable. So we started off with that. And on the front of the can, it was a big green 26-ounce can. And on the front of that, we decided to put a picture of dairy cows for this meat brand that we were trying to build. And we didn't think about it. We were just early getting started, and we were buying, dairy calves, bull calves off some local farmers for cheap, bottle feeding them, and then raising them on grass and putting them in a can. And we put them on the front of the can. And, people would look at it and they would subtly try to say, but aren't you in the beef business? I'm like, yeah, but... Yeah. Anyways,
I'm trying to remember. Was that like a family friend who came up with the? I guess it wasn't a logo; it was a label.
Yeah, it wasn't really even a logo. But maybe Brock can put a screenshot up if you're watching on YouTube. You can see our very first attempt at branding.
Yeah, no, because it's classic. I grew up thinking that canned meat was like totally a normal thing too, because that was like our first.
Comment if you're wherever you're watching. Have you ever had canned meat before? We literally that was the foundation of the business here at Seven Sons. Was that anchor product. Canned meat. That's our first couple of years. That's all we sold.
Not a lot of people would guess that. But a couple other examples I can think of, and I won't name names here. Again, ugly child. But I have come across someone before who named their business very similar to like one of the top direct marketing brands that are out there, which is, I don't know, just a common thing that you want to do your best to do a little bit of research on up front to avoid, because now you're competing with all that brand awareness that business has. But that's definitely I know, an easy mistake to make when you're out there, and all it takes is just a little bit of homework up front.
It's easy to do though, Brooks. You get excited about a name and you just go for it. You get the domain. I know, Brooks, we came up with the brand Fresh Egg Co. for our egg shipping program. We're going to have to
hold on.
The compressor is right out the side of the door, and apparently it went off. So
we'll be back. How do we pass the time?
Nap time. These episodes are a lot of work. Could just go off and unplug it.
That's a good idea.
Brilliant.
Brooks is going to unplug the air compressor. But it turns out one of the farmhands is out there. Joseph is actually using it. So it could go on for a little while.
Four-wheeler tire down, so.
All that air for one four-wheeler tire?
Yep. Here we are again.
Peace.
We're back. All right. Where were we even at?
So Brooks, as I was saying, one example, even at Seven Sons recently, when we came out with the Fresh Egg Co. brand, which is our egg home delivery program, we named it Fresh Egg Co. I did not realize there is I think it's a digital marketing company over in the UK. The name of their business is Fresh Egg Co. Or maybe it's Fresh Egg, but it's very similar. Now, I think I didn't know that before we came up with the name. Just didn't do enough research. They do come up in Google results. Now, obviously, very different industry.
Yeah, luckily it's clear there that if you're looking for the eggs, that you're not going to be getting that on that website, and vice versa for anyone else. But the big thing is like looking at competitive research of like, there's still keywords that have to compete with, but you don't want anyone landing on a website that someone could misinterpret as yours brand when they were looking for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there's some of that going on with Seven Sons, Brooks. There is a Seven Sons brewing company, I think, over in Ohio. But obviously, there again, it's clear. If you're looking for the meat, you realize that when you get to the brewing website, wrong place.
All right. Time to dig into, we're talking about a few, but what do you have as far as just tips that people can follow when it comes to good logo design? And again, I know a lot of you listening to this probably already have your logo, so we'll get into maybe some things there too if you feel like you need to do a change on that. And we've done that before, so we have experience in that.
Well, I'm going to still stick on the actual name of the company is because that's part of the brand and the logo. One thing I would say is to you don't want to be too specific or use a name that's hard to spell or hard to say. That's going to get really old when you're on the phone with somebody and trying to explain how you actually spell your business name, or if someone can't say it or remember it. That doesn't help your brand out. And on the flip side, you don't want to be too broad either, Brooks. There was a company that was on the scene for a while in the grass-fed space called Grass-Fed Brands. In my mind, that was a little too broad of a name. It didn't last either. So
and it's easy to do. I mean, that had a brilliant marketing mind behind that brand too. So again, these are things we've made the mistakes. So if you're listening to this, we say ugly child, but it's easy things to happen for sure. Big thing there, Grass-Fed Brands, is there's just so much competitive keywords out there if you're trying to grow specifically an online business. So you're doing direct consumer, you're doing e-commerce, not only competing with all the established brands out there who are competing for search terms grass-fed, but also there's a lot of like online blogs and food directories who have blog posts to try to drive traffic to their website where they actually just like break down and list out what are the top grass-fed brands that are out there, and literally that's your name, and if you're not on the list, that's a bummer.
Yeah, right. One mistake that we made with branding in our name, Brooks, was not being consistent across all the places that we used our logo or our brand. And I mean consistent, even like the spelling. Is it Seven Sons Farms with an S? Is it plural? Or Seven Sons Farm, Seven Sons Family Farm? For a while, we had a mess of names everywhere. And this actually, we learned later, this actually affects your SEO value of being consistent about how your company name is spelled across the different directories that you're on, a Google business listing. You want to be, if you're on Yelp, you want to be very consistent about how it's spelled across the board.
Yeah.
So that's an easy one, and go fix it if you find that you have different variations out there.
In your mind, what's more important, the name or the logo?
I don't know. They can be equally kind of damaging, I think. I think that the name is, I think, more important because the logo you can change and do kind of a rebrand. I think it's more difficult to completely change your business name.
I think so too. And again, the name drives so much of the action that your customers are taking when it's like, I want to find who you are, or I need to remember. I heard or saw you at the farmer's market. I'm trying to remember what was your name. If it was confusing or something or very common, it might be hard for them to remember. If I go to Google it and you're competing with a bunch of other people who look like you too, I'm not sure if you're the right one. The name drives a lot of action by the customer, where the brand is almost a little bit more emotional. It's like, people, I don't know, everyone has a design preference out there. And when it comes to logo, there, I think there's a little bit more forgiveness. It's important because I think you can definitely there's a trend aspect of if you can, position your brand a certain way where it has appeal for your customer and it looks fun, that can inspire action to move forward. But as far as like the initial search of people trying to remember your name and that brand awareness effect, it feels like the name is just critical.
Yeah, and the name itself can also invoke some emotion, Brooks. I think of some of our clients, for example, Maple Wind Farms. When you think of Maple Wind Farms, I think of a picturesque setting. Think of Seven Sons. It kind of inspires that family feel to it. So.
Yeah, I'm going to pick on someone here because, well, we like them. They're a great client. They're doing so many things right. So they've got some room here for us to dig in a little bit and poke a hole. But basically, Family Cow, they have a great, I think that does the exact same thing there, where the Family Cow.
I love the name.
Yeah, the name just brings in like, okay, that family feel. Like everyone can kind of knows, or a lot of people know the story of having that family cow around them. They're trying to provide that service to their customers, right?
Awesome.
Who aspire to that. But then the logo breaks a few of the principles I think you'll probably dig into here a little bit deeper. So maybe we'll circle back to that.
Yeah, okay, so let's jump. We kind of talked about the name for just a bit there, Brooks. Let's jump to the actual characteristics of how the logo itself is constructed and designed. One of this is no particular order, Brooks, but things that we think about and recommend for clients is try to arrive at a square logo if possible. It's hard to do. Seven Sons isn't perfectly square when you have the logo on top, the emblem, and the name. But it's far easier for just building an online presence. So this is specifically if you're building an online presence. All the different, directories, places you need to upload your logo, they're almost always formatted best for a square design. And so it's universally easier to put out there.
Yeah. It's like with your landscape style logo, there'll be a lot of different places where you need to upload your logo, and the landscape style will have a lot of white space up on the top.
Or
and the
literally
bottom.
Cut off half your name, the two ends of your name.
Or it has to be so small in order to get the fit, like you can't even recognize it and it just looks silly.
Yep. So if you can arrive at like as close as to square as possible, that will help you out. This is really important, Brooks. I think this is a big one. But if you took your logo and you sized it down on a piece of paper to an inch by inch square, or imagine that you're sizing it down on your computer screen to an inch by inch square, is it still very, very legible? And this is where you were mentioning Family Cow. When you start squeezing that logo down to that inch by inch, it gets a little more difficult to read for sure. The Family Cow aspect of it, but then there's some slogan information. I actually have it pulled up here. I'm not sure what it even says looking at the website here. So I know there's some wording there, but that's just an example. Is it plain and legible at an inch by inch square?
I love it. And again, we're having fun with this, but it's super easy to do. And this is one that we see time and time again. I'm sure somewhere along the lines with some of our businesses in the past, we've made the same mistake. Because a lot of times people will you want to include some, I guess it would be like your ethos statements, or even sometimes people put the date they were established into the logo, and it's real small.
Where they're located.
It looks fine when the designer's sending it back to you and you're looking at it on a full screen on the desktop, but you got to imagine that looking and scaling all the way back down to, a square inch, and is it still something that you can recognize? And a good thing to do too is, even if you see that is the case with your logo right now, go ahead and see if you can create a quick variation of that does scale down. So maybe it's like the first letter inside the logo, or a certain aspect of logo that you can get to scale down to.
Yeah, I've seen really complex logos before, but there's a main element that they can pull out, or an abbreviation. Actually, ButcherBox does this because they have a rectangular logo. I've noticed this, but then they have a square version that just says B and B with a little, I think there's a butcher knife there.
Yep.
And they were able to manage that conundrum that way. So
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, and other idea behind square and being legible at such a small area, Brooks, is in the food business, you are having to print your logo on small spaces, on labels, on egg cartons, at different places where it needs to be legible when it's small. So
Yep, for sure.
So here, another one, Brooks, would be legible in a single color. So imagine you're applying all these square, it's 1 by 1 inch, and it's only a single color. And this is important too with branding and applying this logo to packaging, different types of packaging, a lot of times you're limited to one color, and it has to be recognizable in a single color. So those are the kind of the 3 rules of thumb there, Brooks, that we try to hold ourselves to, and that we help other clients filter their branding.
That one color one is actually really important, because you can see, I've seen a lot of logos that make that tricky, especially farm logos. I think can fall prey to that, because a lot of times you want to include maybe like a landscape design, and there's some trees in there and stuff that just has way too much detail, that once you put that into one color, you can't make out anything. It looks like like an ink speck on the top left of your invoice versus your logo being up there instead. So it's an easy thing to miss, and something that's unique, I think, about this industry, where your logo is going to end up places where it's one color, and even just from a cost savings side of things, when you're printing physical marketing material, you might actually save by going with one color versus an upcharge for the color options instead.
Yeah, and when you have to start adapting, I'm printing to an egg carton and there's only this much space, or there's only this color, what happens is, if you have a complex logo that breaks these rules, you'll end up with so many variations of this logo out there because of the application you were having to make it fit in. And so that's not great for branding, having all kinds of variations of your name and logo out there.
Do you have any thoughts or advice for anyone who's listening and realizing that their logo breaks a few of these principles, and they now might need to go back to drawing board? And we've done that before too. So any advice on, like, should you actually go back to drawing board depending on what stage you're in and get a new logo design? And if you do, what are some thoughts and best practices to follow?
Well, I think if you're having to do a complete rebrand, I would say the problem is only going to get worse if you keep putting it off. So I would say, start the process, figure out what logo you want to move forward with, and just begin being disciplined about every time you go to print a new package, a new T-shirt. You obviously get it updated quickly on all your digital forms, but I would say yes. If you've identified that I really probably could use a rebrand, just don't panic. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just start, and over time, within a year or two, everything will be back in order and consistent.
I think it's another reason why the name is more important to get right up front than the logo, because the logo is easier to change. I mean, we're picking on Family Cow, but obviously they got the foundation of the name and a super successful direct marketing business and family, and they've made it just fine with the logo that they have, even though it didn't pass some of those principles that you talked about as far as 1 inch, one color maybe. So this is another reason why I think that, and we've gone through a name and brand name change before, and that was far more work, far more of a nightmare than any time we've ever done a logo tweak over the years, for sure. If you do a brand name change very late into your business, it'll never fully go away. We still have random invoices and letters and mails that comes in from the old Honored Prairie business name.
Yes, well. And everyone always asked, how do you spell prairie again? So
anyone brand new who's getting into this and looking at logo design service, how much does someone pay for logo design if they're having to hire something like this out?
I think you can come up with a great logo design anywhere from $500 to $1,000 when you look at the different crowdsourcing platforms that are out there. We've used 99designs.com on several of our logos. I think the Graves Cart and Hang Gear logo, as well as the Fresh Egg Co. Logo, were all 99 Designs logos. So
yeah, it's actually a really fun service, because you can do like a logo contest where you get a lot of different designers and diversity involved in creating, and you can get a lot of feedback to these different ideas and point designers in different directions. So we would like it for that purpose. You do need a little bit of a vision of what you're looking for in order to guide those designers, and that way they're not just stabbing in the dark. But Fiverr is another great place for people. It's a crowdsourcing service to look at for logo design. And I think this is something that it does not have to be expensive. I see sometimes people will go out and hire their local, marketing firm in the local town to hire something out like this, and you're paying an actual designer there to do that, and they've got to cover that cost for those services. So it can get expensive quickly, and it feels like, oh, you just have to because it's the foundational stuff. And yes, it is foundational, but following principles like this, you can cast a vision, get with a freelancer out there, and this does not have to be something that breaks the bank. But it is, once you kind of go from there and you get it right, I would also recommend getting the logo, the name, and then a brand guide. So a brand guide would be where you kind of define your colors and a theme for the brand. A lot of times that incorporates how the logo turned out. And it's just a little PDF document that you can then share with a web designer when you go to create any other marketing collateral or assets, whether it's print marketing, your website. You just go ahead and fire over the designer your brand guide.
Here are the actual color specs.
It has like the hex
fonts.
color codes on there too, so they can get the exact color code when it comes into reprinting those. Because I know, man, it's never fun when you get print marketing back and like the green is nowhere close to your logo green, and it turns out very different than what you want. So those are just good foundational things, and then you can turn to really expert help when it comes to getting your logo or your website and those types of marketing collateral down. They have a foundation to start with.
One of my final pieces of advice, Brooks, is for someone new who's listening is to, you will be tempted to say, I'll get to this later. But the reality is this gives you instant value, because if you're marketing online, it gives credibility to your business, because it shows that, hey, you've taken time to do your branding. It looks professional, and then it's going to save you headaches in the long run.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, hey, really appreciate you guys listening. This was a fun kind of shotgun episode on a few tips. If you enjoyed and got value from the episode, let us know in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe and catch us next time.